Tom's polished shoes tapped against the tiled floor of the elegant dining room, his eyes scanning the tables and guests with practiced precision. Every night, he analyzed his patrons the way a chess player eyed an opponent's pieces. One wrong move, one inattentive look, and he could miss his chance at a good tip or, even more importantly, an influential connection. Tonight was no different, except Tom was especially determined. He'd heard a well-known food critic was visiting soon, and he was determined to be at his very best, impressing anyone who looked like they could be someone. Just as he adjusted his tie and plastered on his trademark smile, a man entered the restaurant. Tom noticed him immediately, a tall, middle-aged black man with a modest jacket and dark slacks. Nothing about him suggesting wealth or influence. To Tom, he was a regular, maybe just a passerby who'd wandered into the wrong place. The man seemed polite, though, nodding to the hostess, who directed him to one of the best tables by the window. As he walked past, Tom barely spared him a second glance, noting the feint wear on his shoes and the simple leather briefcase by his side. "Not worth my time," Tom muttered under his breath, adjusting his cufflinks and directing his focus back to a well-dressed couple he'd been serving. With a broad smile, he poured wine for the couple, fully aware of their appreciative murmurs. Minutes passed. The gentleman by the window patiently waited, glancing at the menu, and then at Tom, who continued to ignore him, avoiding eye contact at all costs. After tending to nearly every other table, Tom finally approached the man, setting his jaw into a forced smile. "Good evening, sir," he said coolly, only glancing at the man for a brief second. "Have you decided what you'd like?" The man looked up with an easy, polite smile, his voice steady but calm. "Actually, yes, I'll start with the soup of the day, and I'd like to follow that with the steak, medium rare. And could I also have a sparkling water, please?" Tom scribbled quickly, barely looking up. "Sure thing," he replied, a trace of impatience in his tone. He didn't offer the warm demeanor or friendly banter he usually did for high-profile guests. With a quick, "I'll be right back," he walked away. Nearby diners glanced in the man's direction, a couple even shooting disapproving glances at Tom. He saw them, but brushed it off. Some people just don't understand how this business works, he thought, shrugging off their silent judgment. As he returned with the soup, setting it down without so much as a smile, the man looked up and quietly addressed him. "Excuse me, Tom, isn't it?" His tone was gentle but firm. Tom's face tensed slightly. "Yes, that's right. Is there a problem with the soup?" "No, the soup is fine. I just wondered if perhaps, I don't know, perhaps I've done something to upset you." The man's question hung in the air, calm yet direct. Tom froze for a second, then regained his composure. "Oh no, sir. Just busy night, that's all," he replied, his tone dismissive. The man's eyes lingered on him a moment before he nodded slowly, as if seeing something deeper than Tom intended. "I see. Well, thank you," he replied, his calm tone a stark contrast to Tom's clipped responses. Turning his back, Tom scoffed to himself. What does he expect? The royal treatment? He thought as he went back to schmoozing other tables, sharing friendly smiles and jokes with guests he considered more worthy of his time. After a few more trips back and forth to other tables, Tom noticed the restaurant owner, Andrew, walk in. Andrew was a tall man with an air of authority, but a welcoming demeanor. He greeted some guests and then, to Tom's surprise, walked directly toward the man by the window, his face lighting up as he extended a hand. "Marcus, you made it," Andrew said, his voice ringing with warmth and respect. Marcus stood to shake his hand, his polite smile turning into a genuine grin. "Andrew, thank you for the reservation." Tom's stomach dropped. Marcus? He hadn't realized this was the man Andrew had been speaking of earlier, a highly influential figure in the industry. In an instant, Tom's cheeks flushed red as he scrambled to understand the situation, his mind racing through every cold, dismissive word he'd spoken. Andrew turned to Tom, oblivious to his inner turmoil. "Tom, I trust you've been taking good care of Mr. Marcus here?" Tom stammered, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. Yes, of course, Andrew. Absolutely." Andrew chuckled, clapping Marcus on the back. "I'm glad to hear that. You know, Marcus, this man here," he gestured to Tom, "he's one of our most attentive waiters, always eager to give our best service." Marcus raised an eyebrow, his face unreadable as he glanced at Tom. "Is that so?" "Yes, Marcus," Tom blurted, suddenly desperate to salvage the situation. I always aim to provide exemplary service. If there's anything at all you need, please let me know." There was a slight pause before Marcus responded, his eyes fixed on Tom. "Well, thank you, Tom. I'd appreciate if you could bring me a fresh glass of sparkling water when you get a chance." Right away, Tom stammered, his throat dry. He turned on his heel, making a beeline for the kitchen, his thoughts a chaotic blur. How had he misjudged so spectacularly? The realization that he had treated a man of Marcus's influence with such disregard gnawed at him. As he poured the water, he caught sight of his reflection in the metal of the dispenser. He didn't recognize the frantic, insecure expression staring back at him. Just moments ago, he'd been confident, thinking he knew exactly how to handle his guests. Now his own arrogance felt like a weight around his neck. Returning to Marcus's table with the water, he leaned in, his voice soft but thick with remorse. I apologize if my service seemed inattentive. It was not my intention to." Marcus met his gaze, his eyes unwavering. "Thank you, Tom. I do hope you treat all your guests with this level of courtesy in the future." The words were simple, but each one hit Tom like a stone. Tom swallowed, nodding slowly, the weight of his own mistakes settling heavily on his shoulders. Tom spent the next hour trapped in a cycle of forced smiles, over-the-top politeness, and internal panic as he waited on Marcus. Each time he returned to the table, he tried to make his demeanor warmer, more professional, but the man's calm and collected gaze left him rattled. Other diners noticed his flustered attempts to regain his composure, and the few who'd seen his original treatment of Marcus watched with a mixture of pity and satisfaction. Tom could feel their stares, the prickling of his own shame growing hotter each time he returned to the table. Finally, Andrew made his way over to Tom as he polished silverware at the station near the bar. "Tom," he said with a broad smile, "how's Mr. Marcus doing? I noticed you've been running back and forth, giving him the top treatment." Tom forced a grin, nodding. Yes, of course. He's satisfied, I think. Just trying to make sure everything's perfect for him." Andrew's smile faded a little as he narrowed his gaze. Marcus is a friend of mine, right? He's got big connections, Tom. If he likes us, he might have some opportunities open for our staff. He's been looking for fresh talent for a new project of his. Tom's eyes widened, his stomach dropping yet again. Opportunities? He swallowed, his throat suddenly dry as the weight of Andrew's words settled. This wasn't just a test of his customer service skills. It was a chance, a real shot at advancement. And he'd nearly sabotaged it with his own arrogance. "Oh, believe me, I understand," Tom replied, forcing confidence into his voice. I'm taking very good care of him." Andrew's eyes lingered on Tom for a moment, and his usual cheerful expression softened. "Good," he said simply, though there was a hint of something unreadable in his tone. "Remember, we never know who's sitting at the table. Each customer counts, Tom." As Andrew walked away, Tom felt the full weight of his words. He returned to Marcus's table, determined to win back the man's good graces. But as he approached, he noticed Marcus watching him with an unwavering gaze. "Mr. Marcus," Tom began, trying to keep his voice steady, "is there anything else I can get you? Perhaps another wine pairing?" Marcus shook his head, his expression thoughtful. "No, thank you, Tom, but I appreciate you coming over. It's been a busy night for you, I'm sure." Tom hesitated, then forced himself to press on. "It's important to us that you have a good experience here," he said, the words feeling hollow after his initial behavior. I want to make sure I'm meeting your expectations." Marcus raised an eyebrow, setting down his glass of water. "Meeting expectations," he echoed slowly, the words hanging between them. Tom felt his cheeks redden, but he held his ground. "Yes, sir. I hope my service has improved since the start of the evening." Marcus studied him for a moment, his face expressionless. "Tom," he said finally, his tone gentle but pointed, "I'd like to understand something. Did you think, when you first saw me, that I wasn't someone worth your best effort?" Tom's stomach twisted, but he knew he couldn't lie. He shook his head, the shame building as he forced himself to answer. "No, sir, I thought you were just a regular customer. Marcus nodded, as if confirming something he'd suspected all along. A regular customer, he repeated, the hint of disappointment in his tone impossible to ignore. Tell me, Tom, what makes a regular customer less deserving of your respect? The question caught Tom off guard, and he stammered, searching for words that would justify his actions without making him seem shallow. But nothing he thought of sounded acceptable. I didn't mean to come across that way, he managed finally. It was a mistake. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his gaze unflinching. You know, Tom, he said, his voice soft but firm, in my line of work, people's true character tends to reveal itself when they think no one important is watching. Tom swallowed hard. I understand, sir. And I'm sorry. Truly. Marcus regarded him for a long moment, the silence stretching between them. Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying an almost fatherly tone. Mistakes are forgivable, Tom, but only if we learn from them. You're fortunate. Not every mistake has a second chance. Tom's eyes widened at the unexpected mercy, and he felt a mixture of relief and guilt washing over him. Thank you, Mr. Marcus. I really mean it. If there's anything I can do to show that I've understood, just tell me. Marcus gave a slight nod, as if acknowledging his sincerity. Just treat the next regular customer as if they mattered. That's all. With that, Marcus turned his attention back to his meal, leaving Tom standing there, rooted in place. The simplicity of Marcus's words struck him harder than any reprimand could have. He realized that it wasn't just about winning the favor of important guests. It was about genuinely respecting every person who sat at one of his tables. As Tom walked back to the kitchen, he felt the intensity of his earlier ambition dissolving into something he hadn't expected, a quiet understanding of his own flaws. His mind churned with Marcus's words, his pride still bruised but a sense of purpose beginning to form within him. He realized that his success wouldn't be defined by who he impressed, but by how he treated everyone, no matter their appearance. The rest of the night passed without incident. Though Tom continued to replay the interaction in his head, the sting of Marcus's words echoing each time he looked into the eyes of his next customer. When the evening finally came to an end and the restaurant lights dimmed, he watched as Marcus rose to leave, offering Andrew a warm handshake. Just before stepping out, Marcus glanced back at Tom, giving him a small nod. It wasn't a gesture of approval or forgiveness, just a silent reminder that there were expectations now. And as Marcus disappeared through the doors, Tom knew that, from this night forward, he would never look at another regular customer the same way again. Tom spent the following days haunted by Marcus's words. The nod Marcus had given him as he left wasn't just a goodbye, it was a challenge. Every time Tom approached a new customer, his mind replayed Marcus's calm but piercing question. What makes a regular customer less deserving of your respect? He was different now, somehow. He could feel it, but the weight of his mistakes still lingered, and he hadn't quite forgiven himself. He became meticulous in his work, giving each guest his full attention. He would listen to each order carefully, maintain eye contact, and show genuine interest. No more assuming who was important based on their looks. No more judgments. One evening, just as he was starting his shift, Andrew called him aside. Tom, he said with a slight frown, we need to talk. Tom's heart sank. Had Marcus reported his behavior after all? Perhaps this was the end. Is something wrong, Andrew? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Andrew's expression softened slightly. Marcus told me about what happened that night, he said. About the misjudgment. Tom felt his face heat up with shame, but he nodded. I understand. I made a mistake, and I can't express how sorry I am for that. I've been trying to make up for it. Every day. Andrew studied him for a moment, then nodded. Marcus saw potential in you, Tom. That's why he came here in the first place. He told me he's looking to hire someone with ambition and drive for his new restaurant project. When he mentioned your name to me weeks ago, I honestly thought you'd be perfect for it. Andrew sighed, leaning against the counter. But after what he saw that night, he has his doubts. Tom's stomach twisted, but he listened, determined to hear every word. Marcus asked me if I thought you deserved another chance. Andrew continued, his gaze intense. I told him you did, but it's not up to me, Tom. He wants to talk to you again. Today. Tom's eyes widened. He's coming here? Today? Andrew nodded. In about an hour. He wants to see for himself if you've taken his words to heart. Panic surged through Tom. He hadn't expected this, another test so soon. He'd been doing his best. But was it enough to convince Marcus? He felt a nervous tremor in his hands, but he straightened his shoulders and took a deep breath. Thank you, Andrew, he said quietly. I won't let you down. An hour later, Tom saw Marcus enter the restaurant. This time, Marcus was accompanied by two other men, both dressed in understated but well-tailored suits. Tom's heart raced as he watched the three men sit down at a table in his section. Swallowing his nerves, he approached with a genuine, warm smile, determined not to let fear cloud his focus. Good evening, gentlemen, he greeted them, maintaining eye contact. Welcome. My name is Tom, and I'll be taking care of you this evening. Can I start by bringing you some water? Marcus gave him a polite nod. That would be great, Tom. Sparkling for me? The other two men placed their orders, and Tom noted each detail attentively, aware that Marcus was watching his every move. He hurried to get their drinks, reminding himself to stay calm. This is your chance. Show him you've changed. As he returned with their drinks, he poured carefully, focusing on his work and keeping his movements smooth. Are you ready to order? Or would you like a few more minutes? He asked, making sure his tone was respectful and patient. One of Marcus's guests spoke up. I think we're ready. I'll have the lamb with the chef's recommended wine pairing. Tom nodded, turning to the next guest, who ordered a steak, and finally to Marcus. Marcus set down his menu, looking up at Tom with a faint smile. I'll have the roast chicken tonight. And Tom, thank you for your attention to detail. It's nice to see you've been working on that. Tom nodded, unable to suppress a hint of relief as he jotted down the order. He couldn't afford to be overconfident, but Marcus's remark gave him a glimmer of hope. Throughout the meal, Tom maintained his focus, delivering dishes with care, offering assistance whenever needed, and checking in without being intrusive. At one point, Marcus asked about the ingredients of a dish, and Tom provided a detailed answer he'd made sure to memorize. As dessert was served, Marcus finally broke the silence, addressing Tom directly. Tell me, Tom, he began, his tone calm but serious. Why do you want this job so badly? Tom felt the weight of the question, understanding that Marcus was asking for more than just ambition. I want to grow, he replied after a pause. I thought I knew what that meant, but I realize now I've been focused on the wrong things. I was too busy trying to impress people I thought were important. But I know now that it's not about impressing. It's about serving. About seeing each guest as someone deserving of respect. Marcus's face softened slightly. And what about the regular guests? What do they deserve? Tom felt a pang of guilt, but answered truthfully. The same care I'd give to anyone else. I know I've fallen short, but I've learned. I won't make that mistake again. One of Marcus's companions looked at him approvingly, nodding almost imperceptibly. Marcus noticed and turned back to Tom, leaning forward slightly. Tom, he said, his voice steady, everyone deserves a second chance, but not everyone earns it. I believe you're on the right track. But this isn't just about saying the right things. It's about consistency. I'll be watching, and if I see you staying true to what you've said tonight, then there may indeed be a place for you on my team. Tom's heart soared with cautious optimism. Thank you, Mr. Marcus. I won't let you down. As Marcus and his guests stood to leave, he extended a hand to Tom. Tom took it, feeling the weight of the man's words. Remember, Marcus said quietly, this is just the beginning. Prove that you've truly changed, and opportunities will find you. Tom nodded, watching as Marcus and his companions exited the restaurant. As the door closed behind them, he exhaled deeply, his chest filled with a mixture of relief and determination. He knew that the real test lay ahead, not in this moment, but in the everyday, with every guest who sat at his tables. And with that, Tom set off to work, more certain than ever that he would earn Marcus's respect. Not through grand gestures or perfect words, but by proving his commitment to treating every customer with dignity, day after day. The following weeks transformed Tom in ways he hadn't anticipated. Every shift, he pushed himself to be consistent, to embody the lesson Marcus had drilled into him. Respect everyone. It was harder than he'd expected, On busy nights, when the restaurant buzzed with high-profile clients and city elites, his old instincts crept back, tugging at him to prioritize the wealthy-looking diners. But each time he felt that pull, he'd remind himself of Marcus's calm, unyielding gaze and the lesson that gaze carried. Then, one evening, as he was polishing wine glasses at the bar, he noticed a man in simple clothes walk in. The man wore a faded gray jacket and scuffed shoes, looking a bit out of place amid the gleaming marble and high-end clientele. Tom's old self might have ignored him, but tonight he felt a quiet sense of purpose. He knew what to do. He approached the man with a warm smile. "Good evening, sir," he said, gesturing to an open table. "Welcome to Maison Andrew. May I show you to your seat?" The man looked taken aback, as though he'd expected a colder reception. "Oh, thank you," he replied, nodding and following Tom to a cozy corner table. "What can I bring you to drink to start off?" Tom asked, maintaining an open expression. "A glass of water, please," the man replied, almost shyly. "Right away," Tom said with a nod. He brought the water promptly, taking a moment to chat as he handed over the menu. "Are you visiting us for a special occasion?" he asked, genuinely curious. The man's face softened. "Actually, yes. It's my anniversary," he said with a small, proud smile. "My wife and I used to dream of coming to a place like this, though she's no longer with us." The simple remark struck Tom. In that moment, he realized just how much stories and heart could be hidden behind an unassuming exterior. "Thank you for sharing that with me," he said sincerely. "Let me know if there's anything I can do to make this evening memorable for you." The man's eyes held a glimmer of gratitude, and Tom went on to serve him with the same attention he would have given to the most esteemed guest in the restaurant. The man ordered a modest meal, and when Tom returned with each course, he noticed the man savoring every bite, as though he were enjoying not only the food, but also the experience itself. Tom was reminded of why he'd wanted to be in this industry to begin with. That evening, as the man finished his dessert, he looked up at Tom with a smile. "Thank you for making tonight special. I know it may not seem like much to you, but for me, this is a night I'll remember." Tom felt an unexpected sense of fulfillment. "It was my pleasure, sir," he replied. "You're welcome back anytime." As the man left, Tom turned back to the other tables, feeling a newfound confidence in his ability to truly connect with people, no matter who they were. Not long after, Marcus returned, this time with a smaller group of business associates. Tom spotted him immediately, his nerves tensing up but quickly subsiding as he reminded himself of how much he'd changed since their first encounter. He greeted Marcus with the same calm professionalism he now offered every guest. "Tom." Marcus greeted him with a nod, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Good to see you again, Mr. Marcus," Tom replied, shaking his hand. "Welcome back. It's always an honor to serve you." Throughout the evening, Tom tended to Marcus's table with his usual attentiveness, but it was different now. The urgency to impress was gone, replaced by a quiet assurance that his work spoke for itself. He handled their table with smooth efficiency, noticing each detail of their needs without hovering or intruding. At one point, one of Marcus's colleagues asked Tom about the chef's recommendations for dessert, and Tom answered with a sense of pride in the menu, explaining each option with genuine enthusiasm. Marcus watched him, noting the calm precision with which Tom carried himself. It was clear to him that Tom was no longer the overeager, prideful young man he'd met weeks ago. Toward the end of the meal, Marcus signaled for Tom to come closer. "Tom," he said, leaning forward, "you've been excellent tonight. I'm impressed with your dedication to treating each guest with respect, and it's clear you've taken our conversation to heart." Tom felt a surge of gratitude, but he kept his response simple. "Thank you, Mr. Marcus. I can't tell you how much your advice has meant to me." Marcus gave him an approving nod, then turned to his colleagues. "You know," he said, addressing them, "I've been looking for someone exactly like Tom for our new team. It's not easy to find people who understand the value of true hospitality." Tom's eyes widened slightly, but he held back his excitement, listening intently as Marcus continued. "The new restaurant we're opening is looking for dedicated professionals who put respect and service above appearances," Marcus explained. He turned back to Tom, his eyes thoughtful. "And if you're willing, Tom, I'd like to extend you an offer to join us." Tom's breath caught in his throat. The words he'd been hoping for, yet fearing he'd never hear, were now being spoken. He took a moment to steady himself, his mind racing, before responding. "Thank you, Mr. Marcus. I'd be honored to accept." Marcus nodded, his expression proud. "Good. But remember, this is just the beginning. In this line of work, the true reward isn't found in titles or recognition. It's in the respect you earn from every guest, every colleague, and every person you encounter. I believe you've learned that." Tom nodded, feeling the truth of Marcus's words resonate deeply. "I understand, and I won't forget it." They exchanged a firm handshake, sealing a quiet agreement between them, a commitment to values that went beyond ambition. Marcus and his colleagues rose to leave, and Tom walked them to the door, his chest swelling with a mixture of relief and gratitude. As they left, Tom stood by the entrance, feeling the weight of the moment sink in. This opportunity hadn't come from a single night of perfect service or a charming smile. It had come from a journey of self-awareness, humility, and change. Looking around the dining room, he saw not just tables or patrons, but individuals, each deserving of dignity. He felt a shift in himself, knowing that his success would be built on a foundation of integrity and respect. The pride he felt wasn't in his title or the chance for a promotion. It was in knowing that he'd become the kind of person worthy of Marcus's respect, and more importantly, of his own.